Mr. D'Agostino.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I get a roll call?
Mrs. Craig?
Here.
Mr. Hayden? Mr. Giuliano?
Here.
Mr. Nuss? Ms. Ranzan?
Here.
Mrs. Steele? Mrs. Stahl? Mrs. Whitty?
Here.
Mr. D'Agostino?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Would you please join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and the republic to which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings at public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Sussex-Wantage Regional School District Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the school building and notice of said meeting sent to the New Jersey Herald and the Star Ledger.
The Sussex-Wantage Regional School District is a responsive, caring, child-centered community. Our mission is to educate each individual to become a competent, lifelong learner and productive, responsible citizen by providing challenging opportunities in a safe environment through a partnership of families, schools, and communities.
Thank you. I do not have an agenda for COVID, but do we move on to superintendent's report or audience remarks first?
I think I can, present. We'll have the administrators talk for a little bit, and then we can move on to any audience remarks. But good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Basically, the purpose of tonight was to operate in a work session capacity, give the board a concise update on any nuances concerning our brainstorming, our strategy to move forward with a recovery plan for education. We'll talk about, just highlight those two next meeting dates, give you a little bit of insight into the county superintendent's meetings. As I mentioned in previous sessions, that's something that's been ongoing. We constantly deliberate new information that we get from the state, from the Department of Health. Give you a little update on a regional brainstorming meetings. Curriculum committee will give you an update, talk a little bit about the feedback from stakeholders and things that we should be thinking about, a little bit about what to expect next after the department heads. So future meeting dates, basically the next 2 Wednesdays. We have similar meetings like this. In a regular session of the board later this month. And in between all those meetings, we have various subcommittees going on. Next of which I believe curriculum's tomorrow, and then facilities, Mr. Petrowski's coordinating for Monday. So the county superintendent's meeting updates. One of the things that was noted was the positive rate of COVID tests in New Jersey is currently less than 2% of those tested. Compared to 34% in April. So that speaks to a very, positive trend in the actions that New Jersey has taken to address COVID, at least in my opinion. The Department of Health, Jim McDonald, discussed procedures for addressing confirmed cases, probable cases, reported symptoms, and close contacts based on the Department of Health recommendations. I had talked last time about the notion that the superintendents had asked the Department of Health, could we have a document that basically delineates all the actions that you'll take so that we can publish that for our communities and our stakeholders in advance so everybody knows what to expect. So I'm hopeful we'll get a finalized version on that, either later this month, next month. That's something that I see in draft form. They're talking about brainstorming various opportunities to give teachers time. We want to support our staff to the best ability we can. So considering how we could best realign PD days. And again, just so you know that we anticipate our plans going out later this month. So you have a full 4 weeks, not ideal, but at least you have the information to kind of prepare for. So regional brainstorming meeting. So today we had our meeting with the superintendents and various administrators from High Point Regional High School, Sussex-Wantage, Frankfurt, and Lafayette. and we're trying to, focus on a mindset of collaboration. Everyone's primary focus on health and safety, secondary focus, social emotional needs of kids, curriculum and instruction. So that first mindset, that health and safety mindset, that's kind of what we're focused making decisions on about now. Most districts, bring their focus to some sort of hybrid model of instruction. So far as I can tell, a variation of an A-B schedule, which we talked about last time. We divide students into cohorts, 1A, 1B, and they either go on alternating days, alternating weeks. So an initial phase of reopening for Sussex-Wantage, we talked about last time about taking kind of a health and safety mindset, a cautious approach to doing that A-B process. We're looking at 2 days per week in person, 2 days remote, 1 day everyone remote. And you're going to be inclined to ask, well, what days will they be and where will my child fall into those? So part of releasing that information is, again, coordinating that with the other districts. So we have an additional planning meeting next week to try to coordinate siblings. So, siblings may encompass, helping out with care for some people. It may also, just be easier to have children going to school the same day, that kind of thing. So we'll try to coordinate those announcements together, but please rest assured that we're working together very closely and collaboratively. In my opinion, I've always enjoyed a great relationship with the various administrators in our region. So it's been very productive. Right now for the board, we're currently assessing viability of, starting off with single session days or full session days. They come with pros and cons. You're weighing a lot of different information. You're listening to feedback from the stakeholders and the various committees we're working with. So one pro could be, there's some degree of challenge in providing lunch during the school day under the notion of COVID-19. Not that it's impossible, but it's just, if you did a single session day, you could potentially do a grab and go lunch bag where they're eating off campus at home. Con is that, it further complicates childcare for stakeholders across the board. And again, we'll begin collaborating to strive to align siblings. And there's a survey anticipated to come out, just ascertaining a couple of different things from parents. Policy and funding update, just to give you some insight. Another thing that we've been waiting for that we just got basically an hour ago was Strauss Estimate. I talked about last time, is our policy provider. They're the folks who basically, have attorneys working on staff and educational professionals, and they monitor all of the things that come out from the state, whether it be laws or administrative code, changes to those things. And they constantly send out policy updates so that school districts are in compliance with whatever that respective law or administrative code is. So they just came out with their model template and some policy notes designed to be in compliance with the NJDOE guidelines for reopening. So now the next step is we take our ideas, we put them into that template. And then the next phase of that, what to expect is we're anticipating a checklist coming out from the NJDOE just so we can cross-reference all of their points, all of our points, and make sure you're in compliance with the reopening process. Conditions for learning, we have a facility update from Mr. Petrowski. Frank, you there?
Yeah, sorry, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Hold on, how do I go back to your slide so I can see it there, Mike? All right. Basically, Mike's been keeping us very busy last couple months.
I got you running around, Frank.
We're always finding Mike's always getting new products. We get a lot of emails daily from different vendors, but our focus has been, obviously, these past couple months to procure as many items as possible in preparation for the start of school. Dividers, hand sanitizers, gloves, masks, just to bolster our current supply of what we have. I'd rather have more than not enough. Also, the ordering of isolated and miscellaneous items, plexiglass shields, temperature scanners. I just looked at today and got some numbers on those, like an automated system where a person doesn't have to physically scan the kids. Also, other items that we're in the district reopening as available. Obviously. Some things like the wipes, any kind of wipes in bulk right now are 4 to 6 months out of stock. So at least in the bulk that we're looking at getting them. Focused on we've been focused on clean air, ventilation, maintenance, custodial department, changing cleaning filters on univents, ACs, and rooftop units, ensuring their proper operation. We're also starting to put together a cleaning schedule. I started that yesterday, obviously focusing on the high touch areas, water fountains, doorknobs, basically anything the kids are touching, sinks, bathrooms. They're gonna have to be cleaned on a daily basis, not just at the end of the school day like we typically do. Same thing. We're looking at floor and wall markings for social distance to be identified by the people entering the buildings. So when you walk in, you might see a sticker on the floor that says, please adhere to social distancing guidelines. And they'll be scattered throughout the school, as well as signage displayed in bathrooms about hand washing and so forth, just to kind of reiterate and hit home that idea that hygiene has to be our utmost priority. Next meeting, obviously, Mike said this before, the next meeting for the facilities subcommittee will be Monday. And that's all I have, unless there's some questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Petrowski.
Thank you.
Conditions for learning, Mrs. Wilson, you want to give us an update on the wellness committees?
Yes, thank you. So we had a wellness committee actually today, and we're continuing to work on planning towards supporting the physical and the social emotional needs of the students, families, and school. We do have a variety of subcommittees, as part of the whole committee. We have been working with the nurses, working with the counselors, working with local districts. And we're just really trying to, collaborate as best we can so that we can safely open and, address the needs of our students and our staff. I mean, if we don't take care of staff, it's kind of, if our staff is anxious, then the students are going to be anxious. And if our families are anxious, then our students are going to be anxious. So we're doing everything that we can to, address and make everyone feel comfortable and safe coming back into schools in the fall. A big part of that is working on creating screening procedures, social distancing procedures, mask etiquette, wellness check-in and monitoring procedures, quarantine and contact tracing procedures. So it sounds like an awful lot, and it is, but we are making a lot of progress. And, as long as we keep collaborating, with the county and the Department of Education and local pediatricians, I'm confident that we'll be able to come up with guidelines that are in compliance with what the expectations are, and that we'll be able to come up with a plan that'll make everyone feel safe and secure, and, you'll be able to start working back towards the new normal. And then another part of this as well is, working to boost up our RTI and our crisis response teams. So again, meeting with the, with the counselors and just trying, and teachers, and just trying to figure out how we can assess, what the students' needs are emotionally, but also academically, how we can, address some of these regression concerns, and just monitoring and wellness procedures. There will be a lot of professional development involved, in part of this planning process, but I really do feel like we're moving along. I'll be meeting with the subgroups again next week, and I am hoping to meet with the whole committee at least one more time before the end of July board meeting. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions. Thank you, Mr. Gall.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you.
Continuity of learning, Mrs. Thimolakis can just give us an update on the various aspects. I know she's got another meeting, series of meetings tomorrow. We're going to break up into more of school-based concerns.
Our goals as a continuity of learning committee are to create a parent survey for safety planning for reopening, to discuss hybrid scheduling options, to develop a lesson plan template that has a goal of maintaining effective instruction while ensuring equity and continuity of learning through both virtual and in-person teaching and learning, to gain insight of professional development needs for teachers and community stakeholders through the shift of education, and options to discuss and plan for moving students where they are at in the fall, and to develop student learning expectations for hybrid instruction and for virtual instruction.
I'm having a really hard time hearing Mrs. Stemolakis. Is anybody else?
Yeah.
There's like some ringing and breaking.
Yes.
I'm going to take a minute and ask everybody just to put their, put themselves on mute, except Kaylee.
Okay, so thank you again. Our goals of our Continuity of Learning Committee are to create a parent survey to assist with planning for reopening, to discuss hybrid schedule options, to develop a lesson plan template that has a goal of maintaining effective instruction while ensuring equity and continuity of learning through both virtual and in-person teaching and learning, to gain insight of professional development needs for teachers and community stakeholders through the shift of education, to discuss assessment options to assess and plan for meeting students where they are at in the fall, and to develop student learning expectations for hybrid instruction and for virtual instruction. So as Mr. Gall stated, we have a couple of meetings tomorrow, building-based meetings scheduled for tomorrow, and then weekly on Wednesdays thereafter.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, but the intent of the group asking to kind of break things up was that even though we're one district, there's perceived diverse needs that are unique to each building.
Yes. That's all I have. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And up we have Mr. Kronsky. Mr. Kronsky.
I have a question for Mrs. Stemolakis, if I could.
Sorry.
Of course.
Where are we with regards to orientating the new students for the Wantage School and the middle school?
Go ahead, Kim.
Mr. Barr, you can go.
Yeah, so what we had brainstormed with the principals are, one of the things that we're comfortable saying is that school is not going to look the traditional sense that it always has. Like we don't believe we'll be able to offer, or it would be wise to offer those large scale events like traditional back to school nights, traditional, maybe even progressing into concerts or orientation. So one of the ideas was to allow for orientation, kind of like we've done in the past, where a child can come with their parent to physically look at the structure of the building and identify where their classroom is on an individualized basis, and then doing a virtual orientation session, some of which has already been designed. And middle school has had their sixth grade orientation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if you had anything to add, Mrs. Stemolakis.
That was going to be what I was going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Kronsky.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of a problem with supply of the Chromebooks since most of them are in China. So Mrs. Riker was actually gonna jump in on this slide.
Thank you, Mr. Kronsky. So as the board knows, or if you recall, back at the June board meeting, we there were a number of purchases of Chromebooks approved. And then since that time, now there's no availability because everybody wants Chromebooks across the country. So Mr. Kronsky's been working with CDWG to come up with replacements that would be available to ship over the summer as opposed to receiving them at the end of September, October. So what's listed on the presentation are what we originally approved and how that's going to change. And there is a price difference. And so under normal circumstances, I would say I'm going to make these changes and have them approved at the July 29th board meeting. But if we wait for that to happen, we're going to lose, we may be back in the same situation. So this is the detail. The staff Chromebooks are actually less money. So that's really okay. I can substitute it in the purchase order. And the 6th and the 8th graders, there's actually a typo. One's for Wantage and one's for Sussex Middle School. I'm sorry. There's a price difference of about $1,800 per each 120. That is within the latitude to increase or decrease or increase a purchase order because it's in 10% of the original purchase. But if the board's okay with it, I'm going to adjust the purchase orders, and I still will put it on the resolution, a finance resolution in July, just to have that documented. But we're going to go ahead and make these changes with the CDWG representative, unless somebody has an issue regarding that. I just rather move it, but make you aware of it.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns about that?
And that's really, it's not even the country, it's all around the world. Everybody started grabbing as many Chromebooks as they possibly could. And again, I know Mrs. Riker doesn't want to hear this, but I hope this doesn't change tomorrow, because the whole thing is the whole thing has been very, very cumbersome.
Yeah, well, I know, speak for everyone, Mr. Kronsky, and we appreciate you and Mrs. Riker and your diligence in tracking down the equipment, because, suppliers, and you have it in one moment and then you don't in the next. So we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions for me?
I'm just going to note that Mr. Kronsky is going to be really disappointed if folks don't have questions for him.
No, I'm not. Because they can ask me questions anytime.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wright. So what to expect next? Basically, we have the sessions, the individual breaking off into individual schools. We have these on anticipated to be on Monday, and then we have the coordination meetings with the high school and the region for next. And Mr. D'Agostino, if you're comfortable, we can move on to the next item, community remarks.
Sure. I'd like to just ask you if you could. Okay, go ahead, Mrs. Cook.
I just had a quick question. Mike, in the beginning of the meeting, you said that what you were looking at for the hybrid model was 2 days in person, 2 days in remote, and you said 1 day.
1 day, everyone in remote. So you're looking at the potential for like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, Wednesday remote, that kind of.
Having a hard time hearing
If
you.
I could just ask everybody if you're not speaking, if you could just mute your mics, please. Mr. Giuliano, please notice the difference between the mute and
Stop me, Mike.
I got the right button that time. Thanks.
I think it might be Mrs. Stahl. Your microphone is a little loud, but Mr. Golf, you go ahead, just explaining what to Mrs. Craig.
Yeah, so you're looking at the potential for an AB. What that translates to is kind of like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, potentially Wednesday, totally remote for everyone, for preparation, virtual instruction, deep cleaning, those kinds of things.
Okay, how does that, and I'm again brainstorming. I didn't know any of this. That we were even at this point, which is bothersome. But what does that do then for teachers that are teaching multiple level, like grade levels? Like how does that? Have we gotten to the point where we're talking about teachers to break it down that way that are teaching multiple grade levels in that? Hello?
Yeah, I'm listening.
I thought it hung up. I just had a beep on my phone like it hung up. How does that work for multiple grade level teachers? Have we gotten that far that we're dealing with that?
I think you're referring mostly to middle school, and that's where Mr. Schwartz is kind of pulling those pieces together. One of the positives is that you're bridging the divide to try to collaborate with your region, and that comes with other challenges. So there's a time variable that you're trying to balance in there. I don't know if you're talking about the other two schools. I can't think of an example in my head, but you know, on the respective day, you would potentially have the same schedule that you normally have. So, you know, wherever you are on a normal day for period one, you would be for period one with those students. The question that's coming up more so, as I talked about in the other slide and last presentation for the AB schedule, this time around is trying, you know, to brainstorm the idea with the group tomorrow. Reasons, like I said, there's pros and cons to either starting with a single session day or a full session day. You know, single session days, that's where your schedules to some degree might be modified because of the, you know, time constraints in the day.
Okay.
And like we discussed last week, Mr. Gall, this is like I guess like a phase in, right? You know, you only envision this for hopefully a few weeks. Right.
So the goal for everybody, right? We start with the mindset of health and safety, then social emotional, curriculum and instruction. The goal for everybody is to ultimately return to school. And, you know, we all wish this never happened, but we're not in that boat. We have to kind of pick up the pieces and keep moving forward. So that's where I talked about the phased in approach. We're starting cautiously rather than just, you know, everybody coming in and acting as though things are normal. I just don't see that as feasible at the onset. And again, as far as my travels in the county superintendent's arena, I haven't come across anybody who's trying to do full on traditional school in the traditional sense. There are some smaller school districts, you know, one school towns, 200 kids, that kind of thing, that are, you know, have various models, but it's still, from what I'm hearing, not a traditional, you know, school day.
Right. I'd like to too. I know that Mr. Nuss isn't here and he's on the policy committee, but if possible, I'd like to meet with the policy committee too. If we have those drafts ESME policies, Mr. Gall, prior to the 29th meeting, because I know we want to have those in place by September, first and second reading. So do you imagine we would have most of the Strauss ESME policies regarding this by next week?
Yeah, so just to give you a little background on it, I talked about last time, there are two main policy providers in the state of New Jersey, one New Jersey School Boards, one Strauss ESME. And they've, so far as I can tell, they've taken different approaches. So New Jersey School Boards released, I think it was late last week, maybe 5 or 6 policy changes that they're recommending. So they went at it from the perspective of, we're going to recommend you change your transportation policy in this way, your whatever sick leave policy in this way. And I'm just using it as an example, wasn't a real example. Strauss ESME, in the other hand, so far as I can tell, basically took the opportunity to say, we're not going to recommend you change all your existing policies. We're just going to roll out a COVID-19 policy, so to speak, and it's going to encompass all of those things. So I had that in my possession as of an hour ago. That will send out to the board.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gall. And in the next couple of committee meetings too, whenever the minutes are available, and I realize they sometimes take a couple of days, I'd like to distribute them to the whole board prior to, you know, usually the week before we get the minutes for all the committees. But I think it's important with the pandemic going on that the board has all the information as soon as possible.
I think that as soon as this meeting concludes, I put a bunch of different things in a zip folder. So I'm gonna email that to you folks tonight.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or concerns from the board?
When do you think would be a good time to meet then with the policy? Wednesday, or do we want to try and do it before? Or?
So if we want them on the agenda, you know, by the 29th, then anytime next week is probably good. You know, we have a meeting next Wednesday at 7. So whenever you'd like to, Mrs. Woody, if you want to do it prior to the meeting, if you want to do it, you know, in an afternoon, you know, whenever everybody's available is fine with me.
Yeah, and I would anticipate too, Mrs. Thimmelakis getting some stakeholder feedback in the committee meetings tomorrow.
Right. So, Mrs. Woody, what are your thoughts on the?
The only thing I'm going to ask I'm going to respectfully request is that I'm going to be blocked off for Thursday to do coordination with the high schools.
That's the 23rd, Mr. Gall?
Yeah.
Mr. Giuliano, do you have any lapse in availability next week for policy?
Friday, the 24th is, I'm busy Friday. That's it. Otherwise I'm good.
And does nighttime only work for you, or can you do it in earlier?
You could do late afternoon, I guess. Sure.
Okay.
I'd kind of like to do it before next Wednesday's meeting.
Sure.
So
Whatever.
we could, 6 o'clock, if you think that's enough time,
Yeah.
it could be.
That will
Sure.
Or else Monday or Tuesday, 6 o'clock. I don't care, but I think it should be done before next meeting. This way, if we had any questions about it, we could discuss it with everybody Wednesday night with everybody.
That's smart.
If it meets with the board's expectation, I'd like to invite the administrators to it, just because sometimes we have policy. In the policy meeting, you may say, "Oh, I need to run this by Mrs. Duvall because it's a transportation issue." So to be kind of like a one-stop shop for everybody to weigh in on any questions that we may have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Okay.
When? Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday?
Whatever works for you. If Mrs. What do you want to do? What works the best? Wednesday, you said, is preferable.
Mrs. Whitty, you're going to be on a lot of committees on Wednesday with the curriculum. Just remember that.
Next Wednesday as well.
Is it next Thursday?
You want to do Tuesday then?
Curriculum
Is the curriculum next Thursday or Wednesday?
No, next Wednesday.
Oh, well, then we better do it like Tuesday or Monday, huh? Thanks, Colleen.
All right, so great. So let's do it. Let's just do it Monday. This way the board has time to remember stuff if that works. Monday at 6 p.m. Does that work?
Yeah, I'd definitely like to do it before our Wednesday night meeting in case we want to, get other people's help and opinions here.
Sure. So yeah, let's do Monday at 6 if that's okay with you, Mrs. Woody. And,
that works.
With you, Mr. Giuliano. We'll let Mr. Nuss know as well. Any other questions, comments from the board regarding anything?
Yeah, I actually have another question because again, a lot of this I wasn't aware of, which I'm not going to lie is absolutely befuddling me. Have we taken a survey of the teachers? Have we looked at how many teachers are in a high-risk category that are concerned about coming back? That even if we go into a brick and mortar 2 days, that we're going to have the teachers to support that? I understand that we have to, the frustrating part for me in all of this is that the state has mandated that we must do brick and mortar to some capacity. But do we have stakeholder information from our staff about the people that are willing to come back, that are not in the high risk category, that aren't concerned about coming back? Do we have a backup of subs that if teachers turn around and say, listen, we're not willing to come back, or we're and I also know that that's going to go into policy, that's going to be part of legal. Do we have feedback for how many subs we might have to cover those classrooms if we're actually going to go this route? Like I said, I know we have, and that's the biggest hardship in all this, that we have to open brick and mortar. I think they're shoving it down the road, and I don't agree with it, not you guys, the state. But do we have feedback that we're actually going to have the teachers support this when we actually go back? It's how we're trying to facilitate this.
And students also, do we have those surveys with students too?
Yeah, so I think you were breaking up there a little bit at the end, but we will administer a staff survey. We'll ask different questions, whether or not they'll come back. The way we're going to approach if you are fall into a high risk category is they'll get a memo that's currently being evaluated by our legal department, and then have a deadline to notify us of that circumstance. I have to tell you, you're accurate in the sense that at this time, the state of New Jersey has said that we do have to, plan for reopening schools and being on campus. It's going to be a challenge, and we'll have to take some of those things head on, but it's going to be challenging.
And I agree. I think I thought about this multiple times. I don't know if anybody else has any opinion on it. The ball just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know about any other board members, but I'm hearing conversations from multiple people about what they're not willing to do, what they are willing to do. And if we decide as a district that we're going to go, and I love the idea of the 2 days in, the 2 days remote, the 1 day full remote, I like that idea. But if we don't have the staff to support that, or we have teachers that are on multiple grade levels, I understand that that might be specific to SMS. We don't have the staff there, or we don't have a sub list, then no matter what plan we come up with, it'll fall. And that's my concern as we go into this. And I know we have to write policies. I've seen Stroud Sesame's policy. I know what they're rolling out. And that's a concern of mine going into all this. And I don't know. I don't know.
Can you hear me, Jenny? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Last week, we met with the curriculum, and one of the teachers asked if we would take a survey of the teachers, and I didn't think it was the job of the committee to do that, the curriculum committee to do that. But I do think among themselves, they have taken a survey because someone kind of, said that they did. We're going to meet tomorrow with the 3 committees, and I think we'll have a better idea of how that's going to happen. But that AB schedule was presented last week. And we have to open some sort of like brick and mortar something. And I just think that we're doing the best that we can in these circumstances. I've been on tons of committee meetings. I was on the wellness committee, and there were some parents there that were really concerned. And I just think that we're all in this boat that we don't know how to steer, and we're doing the best that we can. And I think that once we get in there, we have to be flexible on how we go further into this or shut down. Who knows? But I think it's important to find out about the teachers, but it was just not my job as a curriculum coordinator.
Just to expand on that a little bit.
Wait, what, Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just to expand on that a little bit. I mean, the state has been very clear that you're going to have to be prepared to kind of pivot on a moment's notice. I think that was the exact phrase used, to where, you're going to have to go totally remote. And so there's all an interconnectedness to a lot of those decisions, right? Like you're waiting, the departments of health constantly monitor, what those COVID numbers look like. And, from what was discussed today at with Mr. McDonald was that, Sussex County, New Jersey seems to be moving in a positive direction, but you don't know, 3 weeks out, a month out, it could rapidly change. So you need to be prepared on all fronts. But the staff and teacher involvement, is paramount, because, the more we can do to make people feel comfortable and safe and involved in the process is going to help with that. But, nonetheless, I think you'll have some of those circumstances. You'll have some of those circumstances with students.
Colleen,
I hear you loud and clear. Colleen, that we're all doing the best that we can. And every time we turn around, it seems like the ball just gets bigger on how we handle this. How do we handle busing? How do we get on the bus? Do we have an aide on the bus? Because you can't have a bus driver, watching the kids playing with their masks while trying to drive a bus. Do we test them at the bus stop? The questions are endless. So it's not a question of that we're doing the best we can. And every time we turn around, it almost seems insurmountable. So I'm not disagreeing with that by any stretch. What I'm disagreeing with is that there's a lot of this that I didn't know going into this. So it would just be helpful to have some background going into it, that where we're at in the process. Because I don't know if you are, but I know I'm getting questions about what are we doing about this, and I direct them all.
I don't think we can answer that. And I don't think, we can set, right, I know you are, but I think we can set the best plan that we can. I mean, I was out last night with a few friends, and they just bombarded me with questions that I didn't know, and I don't know if we're going to come up with every answer that everyone has, but I think we have to do the best that we can. I think the teacher issue and the substitute issue, like Mr. Gall said, is paramount. It's very important. And that's, I think, what we have to focus on. All the other, the bus and the temperature and this, that, I'm not sure we can come up with every single answer to every single question that parents have.
And listen, the best, if there's a singular point that I can make, is that schools, in my opinion, schools will only be a reflection of the communities around them. So if the community, the county, the state does a great job of keeping the spread of coronavirus under control, then that will be reflected in the schools.
Yep.
In my opinion.
I agree with that.
Can I
Mr. Hayden, yeah, Mr. Hayden has a comment.
I think possibly, I really appreciate all of the briefings we've gotten from Mr. Filakis, Mr. Kronsky, Mr. Petrowski, Mrs. Riker, and Mr. Gall, and if I missed anybody, Mrs. Wilson. I really appreciate that. But like Mr. Gall said, paramount of our concerns is the health and safety of the students, and I think there's a piece missing for this that could build a level of confidence within the teacher community and the parent community. And I think that if we had a report from our school nurses at every one of these meetings, along with the district physician, Dr. Markle, and possibly somebody from the county health department, it might give people a level of confidence, and it might be people that they know, who they respect, and it might go a long way to possibly give us some answers or some new things to think about. And the medical piece is so big in this, and these people are going to be such great players in all of this. God bless our nurses, God bless our district physician, and every healthcare worker out there who's trying to get us through this. I think that they have a level of knowledge that we don't, and they might be able to help us get through this.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. Yeah, are we able to have some of our school nurses represent at next week's meeting, Mr. Gall?
Yeah, well, I can reach out to him and talk to him about that. I think as more and more of the plans are finalized and they weigh in on those specific items, which they've been doing with Vicky, and maybe a kind of a summative response would be good. I don't know about Dr. Markle. I mean, it's very possible. I couldn't commit to Mr. McDonald just because I think that his time is so constrained that his approach has been to work with the county superintendents and even fielding questions. They go through the county superintendent rather than us all bombarding him with questions. But I think engaging those folks would be, very positive.
But I mean, I agree with Bob. Can't we get a statement from Dr. Markle? I mean, maybe he can't make it to the meeting, but a statement could go a long way. I mean, parents seem to really like him. I know a lot of parents go to him, and just get a little statement from him might go a long way too.
Yeah.
When are we going to start having in-person board meetings again? Do we have any knowledge of that? I mean, because
I believe we're
September. I mean,
yeah. So I believe, Mrs. Woody, we're looking at doing our August board meeting in person, and then thereon after. Certainly, we can't not have board meetings in person if it's safe enough for the children and safe enough for us. So we're looking at August, if that's correct, Mr. Gall.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We've initiated now having transition from having administrator meetings, remotely to in person. We'll transition from having a regional meeting from remotely to in person. And I think that having your meeting in person, at least in August, or multiple meetings in August, whatever the board chooses, just instills that extra level of confidence in that the question would arise, how are you bringing everybody back to school, but you're still doing your meetings remotely? I don't think would sit well.
Yeah, I think as soon as possible would be beneficial.
It's still probably going to translate into a scenario like we did right before going totally virtual. We had social distancing in the auditorium, things like that.
Sure. But the sooner we even do something like that, it sees that,
Yeah.
the school is alive and well.
Absolutely. I agree. Especially tonight seemed very laggy, the meeting itself.
I have to admit, I've had some challenges, hearing some of you folks.
Absolutely. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any questions, comments? Don't forget that you're muted, some of you, if you do. All right. If nobody has any further questions or comments, Mr. Gall, are there any audience remarks?
Yeah, so we have a comment from Mr. Luke Batts, first grade parent, Lawrence School. Good morning. Quick question. I'm not sure if it was brought up yet or not to go to a hybrid version. Has anything been discussed about what parents should do for remote learning days as they have to work? Employers may not be able to accommodate limiting schedules. Childcare cost prohibitive. You know, are we aware of whether or not the state or county is going to assist in any way? So no, I'm not aware of the state assisting in that capacity. You know, that's you know, legislatures and things of that nature. But I can tell you that, I mean, it's constantly reflected on when you're in planning meetings and discussion meetings, and you're trying to balance all of those ideas with, you know, again, starting with the premise that everything initially at the onset is about health and safety. You know, on the other extreme of that, you run into this issue of childcare, in particular at our, you know, pre-K to 8 level, whereas, you know, generally speaking, I think that high schools probably don't have to be as concerned with those kinds of things. But it's something that, you know, is very challenging. I mentioned in the last meeting that, you know, my not to tell you hardship cases, but my family too will be personally impacted by that. As we're associated with 3 different schools in the county between my wife, who's a teacher, myself, and my kids. And we're currently trying to brainstorm, you know, what to do in that regard. And, you know, at this juncture, the state's expectation is that we get that plan out a month in advance. So again, less than ideal, but, you know, if it helps, at least you have that month to kind of devise a strategy. Question from Allison Orsi: will full sports be canceled? What about clubs, extracurricular activities? Again, for that initial phase, we're not thinking anything generally traditional, not large group. So things like extracurriculars, clubs, sports probably wouldn't be enacted until the following phase of that process.
Great.
Sarah Moss, SWIA Vice President. Okay, Mrs. Moss. I would just like to thank Mr. Kronsky for always being available to help, no matter how silly the question is, and always finds the time to follow up and see how you're doing. Well, I guess, Mr. Kronsky, you're really setting the bar for everyone. Only aspire to achieve that.
Too bad nobody can hear it because the meeting's all messed up.
Yeah, we heard it, Mr. Kronsky. Don't worry.
That's right. I'll let it wait.
There is a bandwidth issue though tonight.
It's not on our time. It's got to be. I don't know what's going on in that. I mean, we're still clocking at over 150 megs, so we're fine.
Okay.
The another question. I don't know the individual's name. I suspect it may be Barbara Latza. Hi, just wondering if you're considering testing students and teachers before school starts. Help identify asymptomatic students and teachers. Also, what would be the length of the school day? How many hours? Last thing, I feel masks should be mandated. It's the only way teachers and the students will feel safe under one roof. Just my opinion coming from a nurse. It's not the flu. Believe me, it's not. Thank you. Be safe. So yeah, testing students, teachers, that, as you can imagine, has been reflected on to a great extent. The challenges that you perceive with that are a couple. One is that, you know, in no way am I choosing any kind of political sides or commentary or anything like that. But just from my general take on things, the notion of testing for coronavirus may still be challenging in the country. So it would not be realistic in my mind that a school district would all of a sudden be the conduit for testing where we could achieve what, you know, states in the country may not be able to achieve. The other part of that, you know, the initial idea of it, hey, I think, you know, that's a great idea. Like, you could probably acquiesce some fears and things of that nature. But, you know, if you mandated, say, everybody has to get tests and you could facilitate that, let's just assume for the sake of the argument that you could facilitate that. You follow my thought process. Somebody goes to get tested for coronavirus this Saturday, gets their test, comes back clear, going to show it to the school in September. there's a lot of time in between when you get tested and when you come to school where you may have, an additional exposure. So I don't know if it necessarily would be viable for those reasons. Last question I have is from Mr. Wagner, PTO president. With regards to an AB schedule, is the intention that the teacher provide the same lessons twice, or will the lessons be facilitated to the in-person group the same time as the virtual group? So those are things that Mrs. Stemolakis is kind of working out with those curriculum folks when she talked about that lesson plan template and how to achieve that. Or I think you're just kind of building upon what you did in class that day. That was also, last week when we talked about the AB schedule, we also talked about the notion of the different varieties of that. One of my initial mindsets was that, we talked about AA, meaning the same group goes Monday, Tuesday, then the same group goes Thursday, Friday. And one of the things that the group pointed out was that from the instructional standpoint, it may not be cohesive because you're not seeing that group for like another 5 days. So that was something that plays into the notion of, alternating them in a different way, where you see the kids today, they're remote tomorrow, and then you see them in a day or two, you can kind of follow up. And again, I think I talked about last week when we talked about the AB schedule was the notion that everybody's mindset is going to be to compare what you're doing in September to traditional school. This isn't like what we normally do. This isn't, how we normally put this isn't, but it's almost an unfair comparison in my mind. You're really trying to build upon or enhance what you did at the end of last year, which was totally remote. So hopefully we can avoid that. I'm cautiously optimistic that if we put all these parameters in place and follow the state's guidelines that we can. It's exciting, but it's also, as Mrs. Craig said, it doesn't come without, concerns and challenges.
Absolutely. Are there any other comments, Mr. Gall?
One just came in. Okay, I don't know what's going on here with Mr. Kronsky, but Kathy Gomez just sent an email. It's Mrs. Gomez, CEL teacher. Many thanks to Mr. Kronsky and his team. One evening in May, Mr. Kronsky was on the job at 10 p.m. working with me to hammer out a tech issue. Many thanks to Mr. Kronsky. So I don't know if he has checks in the mail or something, but
we're just pleasant. We're just very pleasant. My team is very pleasant as well. I'm very proud of the job that those two fellas did too. I know they weren't nice, so I can't mention them. I wasn't either, but.
And I'm sorry, I missed you because it was choppy. Did you note that that's Kyle and Blake?
Yeah.
Kyle Daly and Blake Simeon. One more question from Sarah Smalling. Good evening. Will we consider for parents to have an option to keep students home full-time on a virtual learning plan instead of attending school in hybrid mode? That we had actually talked about that last week as well, that is a condition of the state roadmap to recovering, extending those options to students. And I don't have any other questions.
Great, Mr. Gall, and thank you for those comments, everybody. I can't let Mr. Kronsky get all the accolades. I just want to thank all the administrators, the staff, anybody that's been involved, of course, the board in these meetings. Again, usually the summer is very quiet, and I know everybody's been working very, very hard to make sure students are safe, and that there's a plan in place to bring them back to school in September. That being said, we have another meeting next Wednesday, which will be another COVID-19 briefing. And at this time, I will look for a motion to adjourn, please.
I don't know, Frank, just if we, Mr. D'Agostino, before you do that, I was just looking at the icons in the image. I just want to thank our law firm, not that we're constantly, hitting them with questions and stuff, but anytime we've had a question in the middle of, you have so many things going on as a district, negotiations and a whole host of concerns that they've always been there for us. And Francis, who's on the line in particular, is just, been really outstanding.
Yeah, she was just emailing us today with guidance. So very helpful for sure. I believe Ms. Fabress is frozen, at least on my screen. But,
no, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
Our pleasure to help.
Really.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for all you do. All right, if nobody else has any other.
One more question, Nick.
Craig,
Sorry,
sure,
one more question.
No problem.
What are we doing in preparing for this? And the governor has already said at the drop of a dime, we could have a shutdown again. What are we doing to prepare the staff, which will then enhance the students for the virtual shutdown? And it was very choppy when Mrs. Sedilakis was talking, so my apologies. So if this was said, I apologize. What are we doing to enhance them if we have to go full on virtual again? You know, it was thrown at us. It was like stick it to a wall and make it work, and they did a phenomenal job. The district, everybody did a phenomenal job. But what are we doing in case that happens? Because it could happen with, as Mike said, and what the governor said, with the snap of a finger and the drop of a dime. Are we doing anything right now? Maybe this goes to Mr. Kronsky, so this could be your shining moment. What are we doing to enhance virtual stuff? Should we have to go to that? Because again, I don't know.
So I think I feel like I got most of that. So, you know, it's multifaceted. You know, you're basically building upon what you learned at the last go around. The last go around was, you know, a big pilot program in, you know, virtual learning. They started with, as far as like, you know, Kelly's talked about designing PD opportunities for both faculty, staff, and parents, because, you know, some parents just don't have the orientation to the different tools that you hadn't, you know, much like teachers had to do. You learned some of it on the fly. So they build up some of their understanding, but, you know, multifaceted in the sense of you're going to provide those learning opportunities via some sort of PD. You know, unfortunately, it's probably going to be virtual. And then getting them the resources that they need from a variety of perspectives, right? Mr. Kronsky talked about those Chromebooks. Like, you may think it's just, you know, students in school, but reality that, you know, transitions to home and the devices that they have. One area that we don't have a remarkable answer for is internet connectivity, right? Like, even if you provide whatever cellular enabled laptops or, you know, hotspots for people who are in situations where they don't have the internet, it's just, and I feel like I can be comfortable saying it because there's been a number of news articles about it over the past probably a couple months, and even going back a couple years. Living in Sussex County, I feel like I can say it, but the internet service up here just isn't phenomenal. It's not what you find, you know, Morrisburg and Essex counties. And you've seen in the paper, if you follow the various political leaders trying to, you know, craft, I think, legislation and enticements for the companies to build their infrastructure up here. So that's one area that I know Mr. Kronsky and I kind of always talk about it. You know, how do you help folks in that regard? And there's a big resource learning center that he put, right, Mr. Kronsky, on a website.
You know, we did that. I mean, you guys, I think it's important for everybody to remember is that we've been doing blended learning here for what? I mean, when did we go one-to-one? It's got to be 6 or 7 years ago. So I think, you know, in some schools and in K through 2, and I'm not saying that K through 2 aren't as good at teachers. I have a neurologist who does everything with a pen and paper. And I think the board traditionally likes the fact that they were still learning with pen and paper. But to say on March 13th, that's really not an option anymore. I think they did a really good job adapting. And I think that the other teachers in the other, let's just call it like it is. Some teachers are better with technology than others, right? That'd be a safe to say. I know certain administrators that are better than other administrators with technology. So I think that the district and that the community did a good job sharing resources. We started to compile from a support base, a tiered system of support where parents and teachers would have a certain problem. They'd reach out to us. We do the research behind the scenes, upload it to the website, or upload it and share the information via a via an email with a link to what we could do to help. So, whereas, some people might say that it's not, I haven't heard too many districts, my brother-in-law lives in Chatham, and, they weren't exactly excited about having to do it online. But I thought, I have to say that I thought that our staff did a pretty good job at that, at adapting and becoming technical support reps as well.
I think technically, I think
sorry.
they did fine. No, it's okay. Technically, I think they did fine, but I think there was a lot of gaps between one teacher going above and beyond and another teacher. There was a lot of inconsistencies in curriculum, in my opinion, and instruction. Jenny, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Listen, we're having our curriculum committee. We're having 3 committees tomorrow. Megan Steele won't be there. If you would like to join us, and with Ms. Malakis, I think it will help you with some of your concerns and some of the anxiety if you're there and hear it yourself from the teachers.
Like I said, it's not anxiety, it's questions. I'm not saying that our district didn't do a bad job, because I think we actually aced it. I think when I look at this whole picture, Colleen, we had something thrown at the wall and we had to make it stick. And I think our district housed it, to be crystal clear on what I'm saying. I think Mr. Kroenke did a great job. And what I'm trying to get ahead of is that at the snap of a finger, the governor could turn around and say, guess what, you're all virtual now. We can't go out and have dinner at the Olive, but we can send kids into a building. So my question is, what can we do to get ahead of the fact that we might have to go virtual? Is there anything we can do to get ahead of that? This is not a critique on what we've done, but I think we've done a phenomenal job.
But Jenny, you had questions on the AB schedule. You had questions on teachers and their ability to come because of their health. These might be questions that you can answer or ask at a committee meeting. And I'm not saying, Jenny, I'm not done talking. You can say, listen, I think as a district on the whole did a great job, but I'm saying that I heard from parents saying that teachers, it was inconsistent. And I have been on that curriculum meeting from March on, and it's been inconsistent. And so as a whole, the district did a great job going from brick and mortar to online. But I think we could do a better job in the fall if we have to go strictly online. And all I'm saying is that we're having a committee meeting. If you'd like to join us, you can. If you don't, that's okay.
That'd be great if you're available.
And I actually said to Nick, that's fantastic, because a lot of this I didn't know, which has led to my question. So that's fantastic. I'd be happy to join. Dial in.
Thank you.
Good invite. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Samalakis. All right, that's great. So we're going to have those curriculum meetings tomorrow. Do any other board members have any other questions or concerns before we wrap this up? All right, seeing none, I will look for a motion to adjourn, please.
I motion.
Thank you. I believe that was Mrs. Ranzan. Looking for a second, please.
I'll second. Whitty.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitty. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.